All right, let's start with the big story that we are tracking in Wion at this hour, where it is expected that pro-Pakistani groups have planned to lay siege on the Indian High Commission office in London on the occasion of Diwali today. After having been denied permission to protest outside the India House on Diwali, the protesters have now come up with a plan B. The protesters have planned to hold an alternative digital campaign outside the Indian High Commission. Now, the pressure, of course, is mounting on the British government to ban an anti-India march in London today. The London's Pakistani origin mayor, Sadiq Khan, has pressed the panic button. He has said that such a march will actually only bring to the fore the fault lines of the society within the British capital. Now, Sadiq Khan has said that this march must be cancelled. But he's also said that he does not have the power to ban this protest march. He's now passed the buck to the Home Secretary, who is Preeti Patel. And when Wion spoke to the British Home Secretary's office regarding the anti-India protests, the British Home Secretary's office responded by saying that neither the Home Secretary nor the police have the power to ban a static protest, and ministers cannot initiate a ban on protest marches of this kind. Now, on Thursday, Sadiq Khan had also written a letter to another Member of Parliament, Naveen Shah, a British lawmaker of Indian origin. Now, Shah has actively campaigned for a ban on the anti-India march. He has written both to the Home Secretary and also to the Mayor of London. In this letter, Sadiq Khan admits that the protesters could still breach the conditions that have been imposed on them. They could still assemble near the Indian High Commission. The India House in London has already witnessed 2 violent protests earlier this year. Now, both sides are willing to take a stand. Both the London Mayor and also the Home Secretary are unwilling to take a stand. The British lawmakers are just shifting responsibility. And this is, of course, something that is being watched very closely at this point of time. All right, now for more on this, we are joined in by our London Bureau Chief, Mandy, who's joining us live from London. Mandy, thank you very much indeed for joining us on this broadcast on Wion. Let me begin by asking you this. There is this expectation that a large crowd could gather at the Indian High Commission's office. Now, what's exactly expected to play out today in London then?
Well, so what we are expecting, because the police has put massive conditions on the march and the march route. At first, it did pass by the Indian High Commission, what's known as India House, but now they've changed it. This is the starting of the route. This is at Parliament Street, and they're due to walk down all the way down to Trafalgar Square. Now, that is the conditions the police have allowed the route march. They said if any breach of those conditions, there will be consequences. They've certainly beefed up police numbers for that protest, and they said no one can gather before the protest until 2 in the afternoon local time. So at the minute, it's all quiet, but those that would seem that the protesters who are due to arrive in large numbers would be adhering to the police conditions if they show up earlier or if they do gather outside India House. They made it very clear that that they would be prevented from doing so. So far it's quiet, but there is an expectation that protesters will arrive in vast numbers to do the march down the street.
Right, at this point of time, do we know as to who are the people who are organizing this protest? Because, you know, a crowd of this nature does not just come out of thin air. There will be a lot of mobilization that takes place behind the scenes. So do we at this point of time know as to who's responsible for organizing this protest?
That has been unclear. It's under the banner of this march is not said to be anti-Indian per se, but it's for Kashmir. So, but finding exactly who has organized it has proved incredibly difficult. So there's lots of groups and talks about where to gather, but it's been incredibly murky to find the organizers, which is strange because normally when it comes to big marches, there's often even a website set up for the day so people know where to gather, just to organize those protesters. That hasn't been the case in this one, making it very difficult for people outside the community to get a lot of details on what's planned, where they're gathering, and who's behind it.
Absolutely, indeed. And now there's been a call that this march should ideally not be allowed to happen. There have been calls that this march should be banned. Now, the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, has said that he can't do anything very much about it. The Home Secretary, Preeti Patel, she's also said that, she can't actually ban a march of this nature expressly. So what is the problem here? I mean, why is there a problem in asking for a march to be banned, considering the fact that last time round, when something like this happened, these protesters decided to throw tomatoes, rotten eggs and even stones at the Indian High Commission's office?
So, yes, violence is absolutely not allowed and abhorred, and they've certainly increased police numbers in case of any instance of violence. But what the public can't do, because it's enshrined in British law, is prevent a planned protest. When you ask for permission, the police more or less, as long as it's not hate speech, and the way they frame this protest is that it's not anti-Indian, but it's pro-Kashmiri, so they framed it outside of hate speech, then they can allow it to go on. But the police, the only thing the police can essentially do is control those routes to prevent violence, because they can't control what people want to protest about. That is seen as a human right, the right to protest. But what they can do is prevent anti-hate speech, and they can prevent violence. So that is where they're trying to get the balance right. And certainly Sadiq Khan made it perfectly clear that he thinks it's entirely inappropriate for this to happen on Diwali, recognizing it's a very holy and auspicious day, and it seemed to be done just to cause offense. So he also pointed out the day itself is entirely inappropriate as well.
Absolutely, indeed. We'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed, Mandy Clark, for joining us and getting us all those updates. We'll, of course, come back to you as the story unfolds in London there.